It's easier for you to hear me if I'm not on mute. Hello, and thanks very much for joining us today for our InVision 2018.1 What's New webinar. We really appreciate your making the time to visit with us today. We'll be recording this session. We'll leave about 10 minutes to answer questions at the end. This release will be available about the 1st of November, but we wanted to give you an advanced look at what's coming so that you can get ready and ask any questions you might have as we get ready for the release in the next few weeks here. The overall focus of this release has been on assets and utilities and infrastructure. The last release in 2018 was really focused on space management, move management, kind of indoor space and occupancies kinds of issues. But we realized that our customers have a great many business problems related to what we call the fence line in, all of that utilities and infrastructure, including trees and roads and parking lots and a variety of different utilities and infrastructure, and that's what this particular release is all about. So specifically in this new release, the big headline application, the new app is Asset Manager. Asset Manager really takes a lot of the patterns and UI concepts that were established with Space Manager in the 2018 release and applies this to assets. Assets are interesting because there's so many different kinds of assets. There are IT assets and safety and security assets, HVAC, roof defects, and of course a whole range of utilities and infrastructure assets. So Asset Manager is really designed to help you understand and maintain data about your assets, to build KPI cards so that you have a continuously updated understanding of your key performance indicators related to assets. What is their status? What is their condition? Which of those assets need to be inspected, that sort of thing. So the basic filtering and searching capabilities that you may have come to be used to in Space Manager are now available in Asset Manager. And along with a number of data management kinds of capabilities like bulk update. You can also export your data from Asset Manager to Excel like you can from Space Manager. So Asset Manager really is a big step forward in enabling customers to manage their assets indoors and out across the portfolio. And Asset Manager is a highly configurable application, so you can create Asset Manager instances for a wide variety of different kinds of assets. So you might have an Asset Manager instance for a particular utility system, or another one for safety and security assets, another one for leases, for instance. So there's a wide variety of ways that you can configure Asset Manager to reflect the needs of different user groups across your campus. And really the configuration story is another big and important theme within the InVision 2018.1 release. So in InVision 2018.1, we have two new configuration assistants. You remember that in InVision Foundation, there's a web-driven or a web wizard-driven interface to configuring InVision, and it's always been possible to configure up application templates like Explorer or other templates from InVision. But the new configuration assistants really reimagine that whole configuration process. Some of the new concepts that are released in InVision 2018.1, like group layers, kind of add another level of complexity to configuration. So these new configuration assistants have been redesigned from the ground up with a whole new workflow, a whole new user experience that we hope you'll find is much more intuitive, much easier, much faster to use. These new configuration assistants are available for Asset Manager and for Explorer at the 2018.1 release. With the 2018.1 release, we also have a new starter package related to campus utilities. We understand that our campus customers have a really interesting and complex set of utilities management business problems. Unlike a commercial utility or even a government utility that is responsible for managing a single utility like water distribution or electric distribution, our campus customers may have 15 or 20 different utility systems across campus. And some of these utilities are interesting in that they're more complex than some of the utilities you might find in the commercial space. So you think about steam or chilled water that are actually two line systems. You have a source and return. So these complex utility systems are both interesting and unique and much more numerous on your typical campus than they are in the commercial world. So the campus utilities starter package is designed to help our campus customers really deal with this complex set of utilities and infrastructure business problems. So these business problems include, well, let's try not to dig anything up today. So show me the locations of all my utilities infrastructure, but then also let me classify those utility systems or the elements of those systems by age and by type and by replacement priority, so that I can start to have better information to contribute to my capital planning process, so that I can really prioritize those areas in the utility system that are going to need to be replaced or expanded because of new construction projects across campus. So the utilities starter package comes with some starter data models. So if you've been responsible for managing information about steam systems or chilled water systems, one of the things you'll know is that there aren't well-documented data models out there to start from Esri or anyone else. So we've tried to put together some starter data models for a variety of different utility systems on campus to serve as a jumping off place to start to manage and model the data for your utility systems on campus. Then there are starter apps configured for each of the systems that we have data models for. So you'll see when Ben gets to the demo, you'll see a variety of these starter apps for steam and water and so forth. And then there are utilities manager app configurations as well that help you to filter and analyze and report on the asset elements of your utilities data models. So all of these different components are available in the context of this campus utilities starter package that is available at 2018.1, and we're really interested to hear how you all receive this and where you think this will have applicability in your own worlds. In terms of new and different user features, these are features for end users. At the 2018 release, we introduced this concept of key performance indicator cards for space management kinds of business problems. At the 2018.1 release, it's possible to author and manage KPI cards for assets as well. So from the Asset Manager application, you can create and manage these KPI cards for whatever kinds of assets you choose to manage in your system, and those KPI cards then get shared out to your desktop or published from an administrator out to those that have access to Asset Manager. There is a new set of filter types to support this KPI card concept. For instance, there is a new My Organization filter type that is important, probably particularly for space managers, that allows you to filter down to the spaces that are belonging to your organization, to those that you have control over. There's also a variable date range filter type, which is particularly interesting for assets and leases, so that you can filter down on those assets that need to be inspected in the next 90 days, or those leases that are going to expire in the next 180 days, or whatever. Like the previous filters and KPI concepts, these are completely within your control as a user to author and publish out to your own desktop. Those can be reconfigured and reformatted on the desktop to be most meaningful to you, so that when you log into InVision, you have a current understanding of your asset-related KPIs as well as your space KPIs. In order to support the utilities and infrastructure aspects and the new Utilities Starter app, there's a new system-wide concept for group layers. So a utility system is often made up of many different feature classes. You may have in a water system a variety of different pipes and valves and meters and backflow preventers and other equipment that all participate in the overall water system. So this group layers capability allows you to organize your layers by system or by whatever other concept you choose, and then turn them on and off together to avoid the table of contents from hell that happens when you have just a vast number of different feature classes that need to be all turned on or all turned off individually. Another new feature for users that we're particularly excited about at the 2018.1 release is a new online help center. The product team has been really busy this release adding to the content that's available to support users. There's a whole new range of onboarding videos that help you get up to speed on how to use the different capabilities of InVision. And this new online help center is much easier to use. There's more content in it. There are essentially two levels of content in the online help center. There's the basic user help that's available to any user of InVision that helps you use the different tools within InVision. And then there is a administrator level of InVision that has content related to how to install and configure InVision. So we hope that this new help center you'll find to be really user-friendly and provides you the ability to get at the information that you need, that information is easily consumed and easily understood, and really helps you drive more value out of your InVision implementation. Speaking of administrators, there are also a number of new features for InVision admins. One new feature is support for immutable IDs. This sounds a little obscure, but for anyone who has bloodied their knuckles republishing map services and adding layers and having to deal with the resulting confusion of the reordering of those map layers, this support for immutable IDs, easy for you to say, will make this process much easier and much faster, and give you the opportunity to spend more time really dealing with supporting your end customers. There's a new capability to support change history tracking. So for all core entity types in InVision, you can track who changed what when, so you can go back and see why the status of a record may be the way it is, who changed it, what did they change it from, what did they change it to, who were the previous folks that touched that record, so you can get an understanding of how your facilities data is changing over time, who's most active in changing it, are there individuals that are involved in data maintenance that have say a higher frequency of error than others. All that should be available to you through this change history tracking capability. There's also a new capability that's been long requested by our friends out at the University of Washington, which is to clone an app instance. So as an administrator, if I have put together an application instance for editing of a particular feature type, and then I want to create a viewer instance of it, rather than having to create a whole new instance, you can save this app and rename it and create another copy of that, which saves a whole lot of time, particularly for folks like Aaron out at the University of Washington that have dozens of different Explorer instances for different user groups across campus. So this cloning of an app instance should really streamline the lives of InVision admins in that way. So that's about it for Death by PowerPoint today. I'm going to turn it over to Ben for the demo portion of this. Please sing out or please record your questions in the chat feature of the GoToWebinar. And when Ben gets done with his demo, we will we'll try to answer any and all questions that come up in the course of the demo. So Ben, over to you.
I think you just have to make me presenter, and oh, there we go. I can do it myself. Excellent. Well, good afternoon, everybody, or good morning to some of you. My name is Ben Yetman. I'm the Director of Product at Penn. I will take you into a bit of a deeper dive of some of the new 18.1 features that Stu just described. And we'll try to look as much as we can the next 20 minutes or so, making sure to leave some time for questions at the end. So as Stu led off with, really the star of the show for the 2018.1 release is a new application template, one called Asset Manager. And we're pretty excited about this application. This is, if we look at it in the context of InVision kind of as a system, if you're a business user, you come to Asset Manager really to start asking questions of your data. And based on the responses to those questions, it allows you to take different types of actions. And because both Explore, Asset Manager, and Home Now are highly configurable, the way we've tried to design this is to allow you as an organization really to bring whatever asset data you want. Every organization classifies assets or determines what's an asset a little bit differently or cares about certain things more than others. We don't want to get in the way of that. We want to allow you to bring your own data, whether it's indoors or outdoors, or underground or above ground, or in GIS or InVision, or even from external systems. We want to allow you to bring information here to start to ask questions, understand it, filter it, analyze it, and then perform actions like reporting, sharing, exporting, updating, and really keeping your finger on the pulse of the things that you care about. So Asset Manager has been designed, as Stu mentioned, along some similar UI patterns as Space Manager, but we know that assets are pretty unique and they're a little different than space. So a couple of things we'll look at here, and we'll look at two examples primarily. You have an app template that you can configure really any of your asset data to be displayed in and analyzed in. Through this, you can create new KPI cards, so essentially define the things you care about and then create a KPI card to help you see a live view of it. There's an assistant that helps you configure your data or your business objects into this application. And then some new types of filters that let you understand what's happened recently or what might be coming up in the future that you need to pay attention to. So with that as the kind of the high-level concept review, let's look at some of this in action a little bit further. So I'll show you, I think, two examples here before we move on to taking a closer look at utilities. If you have been an InVision user for a while, you've probably seen some roof management capabilities, really the ability to search and find and see roof sections. And you may be familiar, actually, I've got this app pulled up with Roof Explorer. So we all know that roofs are assets. They're also pretty big assets, both in cost and in area. They're pretty complex because they can have multiple sections. You have to inspect them. You need to catalog defects. You need to track work, and you got to do capital planning. There's a lot that goes into understanding complexities of roofs. And Explorer allows you to go out into the field and search for the roof that you care about, inspect it, or just visually interact with what you see, create an inspection, and drill into details. But when you get back to the office, or you're trying to ask really complex questions of your roof assets, that's really where Manager comes into play. So I've configured a very simple app instance here called Roof Manager. And when we open Roof Manager, this is going to let us see all of our roof assets or anything else we've configured. In this case, I've got roof sections, catalog some roof defects because I'm interested in understanding where those are and what types they are. And right away, you can start to, just like in some of the Space Manager concepts, you can search for something. So in this case, we've got real simple data, but our data could be across the US on different sites. So I can search, I could sort by whatever, but most importantly, I can start to filter. So if I wanted to see all of my roof sections and I wanted to understand them by maybe the type. So I'm most interested in where do we have sunshades? Actually, we only have one. Okay, let's take that off. Let's see, when were these last inspected? Because that's really what I'm most interested in. This is one of our new filters that allows us to say we want to understand a particular date range, or, you know what, I want to understand what all has changed in the last 30 days. So only show me those roofs that have been inspected in the last 30 days. That might be one of the filters that we want to create. We could also go and look at roof defects, which are another way to figure out where we have, in this case, a puncture. And at any point in time, just like in Space Manager, you can drill down into the details if you want to see and understand more of what that is, where it is, and anything related to it. So if we had related entities or links here, you could actually see more details. But in understanding my overall roofs, once I get to my filtered subset, I have actions. So I could actually report if I wanted to. If I've filtered down, I could export. So if I wanted to export these for use in capital planning projects, I can easily export to Excel, or I can save my filters like this inspected in the last 7 days. And when I go to home, this is going to let me see what has actually been inspected recently. So we'll look at one concept here. We have a live view of show me all of my roofs that have been inspected in the last 30 days. Right now we have one. And this works together with anything else you can configure across InVision. So if you want to send folks out to actually perform roof inspections, as a roof inspection occurs, and we go through and we'll just pretend like we're doing one here today. And we're a little lazy today, so we'll only fill in one field. As our roof inspections occur and we come back and log into InVision, we see a live view, so we can see now we've actually completed 2 roof inspections in the last 30 days. And if we want to understand which those are, we could open in Roof Manager to see exactly what they were. We could use that to report, export, or even share those records with other users if we wanted to. So we can see we've had inspections done on these 2. We could share this with a colleague or generate some other reports based on inventory or all inspections. So real simple way to get beyond the let me find and focus and visualize things in the field and really understand the big picture, start to ask questions of my data, and then keep our finger on the pulse of what's going on over time as more and more conditions change or inspections occur or things need to be replaced. So that's one very quick example. A second example is related to something indoors. So we just looked at an example of a roof, which is arguably outdoors. Some people model it as a floor, but it's a big polygon representation outdoors. You can also go indoors and understand assets. So if you want to understand things floor by floor, here I'll open up same application template. This is Asset Manager, but I've just configured it quickly here to look at extinguishers. And you can see here we have extinguishers that happen to be on very different sites around the US. So right away it shows me all of the locations of those things. I can start to do the same types of things of drilling into understanding where they are or when were these inventoried and created. I can do the same kinds of things that show me those that were created in the last 90 days or an actual date range by year. So if we want to keep track of inventory progress as people go out to actually inventory locations, you could set up these types of filters. You can also use this to kind of provide an input to replacement activities or capital planning. So if we needed to understand type, so let's say we're looking at all our dry chem that also happen to be our smallest 5-pound, and we're interested in replacing the smallest because these are the cheapest, but we want to have maximum coverage. This is the set of extinguishers that are probably candidates for replacement. It might be that we wanted to go further into the inspections to figure out the condition or other attributes. But you can easily, and I'll show you in a little bit, configure all of these data elements for the data you bring to the table and decide how you want to see it, display it, so you can start to get into those types of scenarios. And that same data is live again across whether you're in your desktop or in an Explorer instance out inspecting the field. You're seeing a live shot of that same data, and if you're on mobile device or on a tablet, it lets you drill into floor-aware context to find what it is you're looking for. So again, just kind of the concept of indoor, outdoor, above ground, below ground. Doesn't matter where it is, you can get into the details of seeing all previous inspections, any attachments or photos, or any links. In this case, I think we have manuals configured for based on the make model of all of our extinguishers, and then understand the building hierarchy around it. So Manager lets you really bring any of your data, asset data to the table and configure it for how you want to use it or ask questions. And when we get to the administrative side, I'll show you a little bit of how you can configure it. It is, I promise, very simple and vastly improved over previous CCAs. So the second thing that we look at today are utilities. And as Stu mentioned, we have at the 18.1 release a utility starter package. That will help us understand Asset Manager as well as a couple other new capabilities. So if I go back to InVision Home, that starter package ships with a number of standard data models, services, and configured app instances for things like just being able to view and update all of your different systems. Here we have chilled water, steam, storm water, a handful of those that I'm showing. So we can configure really just through a backup, being able to see and search and identify and visualize all of those different standard utility systems. But we know that utility systems can have a lot of components. You could have many different asset types. You could have pipes, valves, all types of different access, either manholes or enclosures. And a lot of times you don't want to have to try to manually add all those. And especially when you're in the search mode, trying to find the exact thing you're searching for or turning on or off layers to see what you need to see. So this is where group layers come into play. And hopefully my internet can keep up here. Group layers allow you to establish collections of your business objects. And instead of just thinking of this as a layer you can turn on or off, it actually allows you to think of those and analyze those as a set of business objects that are related. So if we go into our campus utilities viewer, this is where we have group layers. So sure, we can turn on or off chilled water and storm water and just get down to our steam system if we want. And we can interact with all the elements of the steam system if we're interested in it. But this concept of a group layer also means that we can search across just that subsystem. So if we just wanted to search across chilled water and we want to see search results across the different components in chilled water, here we could see line, manhole, and valve, all that are matches for whatever we're just searching for inside that subsystem. So you can use these group layers as a way to really quickly bring a whole bunch of related business objects to an app, talk about visibility, configure search, and when we get into manager, even allow for analysis and getting deeper into the subcomponents of that group. So if we go and look at manager, which is, for this instance, I've just pulled those same three systems into our utilities asset manager instance. This is where we can start to ask some pretty interesting questions of our assets and infrastructure. So you'll notice on the left here, we have chilled water, steam, and storm water. Those are just the three that I kind of set up today. Hopefully simplified a little bit. And for this, let's say we just want to jump down and look at our steam lines. So when we jump to steam, I've actually configured out a couple more summary fields here so you can see some of the data. There's a lot more behind it. And as we start to ask questions, we can use these fields to filter. So if we wanted to say, I want to see all of my steam pipe segments that are, let's say we're looking for those that are pretty old, so 20 to 40 years old. You'll notice that filtered down, and we've got 133 pipe segments now. It may also be that we want to understand our segments by the count of repairs. So we are particularly worried about pipes that have had more than, let's say, 2 repairs. Now we've got 9 pipe segments that are potentially old and have been patched a lot. Next, we might ask, well, how critical are these pipes? Are they actually going anywhere that's highly critical, or are they kind of going to older or even non-used infrastructure? Right now, the only value we have are pretty critical pipes. So if we use select major, that'll further refine it. And we could even go further into condition to say, well, actually, some of these may have good, but a couple others have either fair or poor condition. So these 3 pipes that we see right here, these 3 pipe segments, we can see where they are. We can also see information about what they are. These are the ones that we should be very concerned about replacing in the immediate time frame. And if you look at replacement priority, currently these are calculated a little bit differently. This, for some reason, says 10 plus years. So if we want, we can use Asset Manager to say, let's update that replacement priority and bulk update to calculate that field for all 3 records to say, how about we replace like immediately? Or we could choose to save this to say, this is critical replacement criteria. So we want to know every time anything meets this criteria, because that means, wow, we have to immediately do something about it. And if we wanted to, we could actually then create a KPI card. So if we say click KPI card, this then gives us a live view into that element of our asset and infrastructure world. So we don't have to go hunting for it every day, right? When we log in, you can see, yep, there are 3 pipes. Could be that we actually want to update that. So I don't really care about the pipe count. I care about the length. Probably not because it's a steam system, but if, depending on the system we wanted to, we could say, yeah, these are pretty short. It's 28 feet total. So, okay, that makes me feel better. So for utilities starter package, you have the real simple capability to get your data in, to be able to view it, to understand it. Next, to be able to view it all together in the context of all those systems. And then third, you have the ability to really understand it, analyze it, and manage it inside Asset Manager, where hopefully you can keep your finger on the pulse. And just to show you a little bit of sort of the general viewer concept, it's a little slower, you have the ability to publish as many view bys as you want. So if people want to see utilities in a certain way by the replacement priority that we just calculated or by default, and of course drill down into all the other detail that we typically would expect to have in a general viewer app. Okay, moving on. Here we go. There have been quite a few updates in space management. Didn't want to totally discount that. The one that Stu mentioned is probably most interesting from an admin perspective is the ability to do change tracking or understand change history. So out of the box now, InVision supports change history tracking for the core data elements. You can update and augment that if you want to track other things. So I've just opened this up, and you can see here we've got about 90,000 updates that have occurred to our data on dev as we get close to this 18.1 release. People have been busy. This you can use to see and sort and understand what has changed and when over time. So if we wanted to look at who edited something, or let's just look at right now space. If we were only interested in space changes and maybe not updates, we really want to understand inserts. So what are the new spaces that have been added in the past? Well, 918, we had a lot that got inserted. So who inserted those? Okay, it was the admin, probably shouldn't worry about that. This lets you slice and dice and explore either for a particular space or building or any entity over time, or other elements that you're interested in trying to understand history of. So if you want to look at this particular space, it's only had one space update in the past couple of weeks since we enabled this, and they changed to ADA from null to compliant. For admins or any data folks on the space side, this is a big one for making it easier to find what happened in the past. All right, next we have a bunch of updates to administration, and for those that are familiar with it, actually for those that maybe haven't ever seen it, I'll give you just a very quick overview. So everything that you do in InVision can be managed here. This takes all of your Esri map and feature services and lets you turn those into business objects. New at this release, you have the ability to create and manage entity type groups. Those are those group layers. So you could say, here's all the things that I want to participate in that chilled water system that we saw earlier. And the new star of the show for configuration is, I'll just jump to, yeah, why not? If we go to any app instance, for people that have seen this before, this will look quite different. So I've opened up and I want to configure an app for helping people find stuff on my campus. So I can see all of the things there currently. I've got space, I've got floors, buildings. For any element I already have, I can go through and configure all of the different details. What's related, what can they search, what does it look like, which view buys do they have access to, can people edit this or not? Or I could come over and choose from any of my different elements if I wanted to add a display group, and maybe that, or an anytype group, if I wanted to add chilled water system, that means it's going to bring all of those different elements along for the ride so people can see and understand it. Let's just, for fun, say we want to add stormwater. And stormwater probably doesn't make sense to have in campus information. We want to have that in a separate display group for utilities. And so all of these are now drag and drop, so you can determine the order of how they appear and the order that they'll be displayed in the different apps. You can also configure the application for which fields to emit, what your map looks like, all the different parent layouts, and of course, whether or not people can see that home icon up here. And one of the other big things based on feedback was make it easier to get back to IB admin or to the sections that I need, as well as, okay, if I save, let me see the app now. So don't make me jump around. Let me just get there and make sure that's what I want to do so that I can get on with the other things I have to do with my day. So lots to know on the admin front. And last but not least, we have the Online Help Center, which is trying to help make it extremely simple, as simple as possible, to find the information you need for how to set up InVision, how to use it as an end user for all the different apps, as well as all of the different types of announcements for product release notes, any updates. And instead of having to drill down and search yourself, this is all searchable. So if I wanted to see the latest on what's it like to configure, you get type ahead. So why would I use a configuration assistant? Or how do I search, sort, and filter? So let's figure out how to search, sort, and filter when I'm in Asset Manager and I get into text and videos and everything else I might need and all related articles. So hopefully this makes it a lot easier to find the things you need and a lot less hunting through PDFs in various apps to locate it. So I know that was a lot to cover in a very short period of time, but I think that will wrap up the sort of key demo parts we wanted to show, and we'll open up for questions.
Okay, thanks very much, Ben. We have had a number of questions come in through the question part of the webinar. If anybody has other additional questions, please put them into that question section and I will attempt to answer them. We had a question from Steve Stansfield at Oak Ridge about whether or not the new configuration assistants are work with Space Manager in this release. The new configuration assistants work with Asset Manager and with Explorer at the 2018.1 release. They will be coming to a Space Manager instance near you in a future release. Anything further you want to say about that particular question, Ben?
Nope, it's in the works, Steve. We are taking the updated experience you just saw and applying that back to Space Manager and Space Planner. On its way soon.
We have a comment from Aaron, who is grateful for the clone app instance capability. We have a question from George Daly at Esri. Actually, a number of questions from George. He's got an inquiring mind, after all. One of his questions has to do with, for the utility starter app, how that aligns with the new network data model that is coming online from Esri. So the simple answer to that is that we have designed our utilities implementation very much with those capabilities of the new network data model in mind. Certainly there's a very clean and clear migration path from the InVision utility starter app into the new Esri data model, if you should choose to do that. And once you get there, there's no reason why you can't continue to use your InVision tools to visualize and manage and report on information that also is participating in the new network data model from Esri to enable advanced things like tracing and such. If there are any other questions, please put them in the chat or put them in the question section. Be happy to answer them. We'll wait around for another minute or so, and while we're waiting, Ben is going to share some information about what's next after 2018.1.
Yeah, so taking a look ahead, we have the 2018.1 release that we just reviewed. We have a big general availability release planned for next spring, as well as an interim in between. There are a lot of things that we're packing into the time between now and next spring, including things like enhanced editing and permissions, both for different geometry types, as well as more granular permissions and security groups for being able to do different types of things. We have user-defined labels for view buys, which is underway in the design. And some big ticket items, we've got a new request framework that we'll be working on this winter, as well as sketch and share and a whole bunch of other pretty interesting, more sort of system-wide concepts that make it easier for you to bring your data in and understand it and communicate. So lots between here and next spring, and stay tuned for the short list of what we're targeting for the interim release first quarter next year.
Alrighty, we have a question from Robert Olson, and he's wondering if we can get a look at the data models for the utilities pieces before the November release. Yes, we can certainly have that conversation, Robert. Just reach out to me, and we can set up a call about that and get into that a little bit more. We can provide you with materials that that can show you what we're laying down for that pattern, and talk to you about how that aligns with your particular needs. So shoot me an email, and I'll set up that call. That question actually was from James Walker, who's masquerading today as Robert Olson. Hi, James. If there are any other questions, please let us know. We're happy to have a call with you specifically to talk about how your needs line up with the InVision 2018.1 release and how we can best get this to you. We're very grateful for your time today, and we look forward to talking to you again in the future. In the meantime, I hope you have a great day, and we'll look forward to seeing you very soon.